Welcome back to This Film Not Rated, a branch of the Music City Drive-In Podcast Network where we try to not rate movies. Now, there's an opinion out there that people on Twitter seem to have where they seem to think that there's an objective truth to movies, and we're here to prove them wrong by going through a series of questions in what we call a gauntlet to see if we can actually be fully objective about a film. And if we can, well, then there's a special prize involved that we talk about every episode. I'm just going to skip past this part because we have a very important film, I think, for us. That's a rating. Scratch that. We have a film to talk about from a guy that we like.
I love that.
Eric, what is this film about? What is this film and who's the guy who directed it?
The Banshees of Inisherin, written and directed by Martin McDonough, and featuring the reunion of Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Martin McDonough, and Carter Burwell, the musician. So, Brendan Gleeson doesn't want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore.
That's the movie.
Yep. Set across the backdrop of an Irish Civil War that took place in the early 1920s.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for this. I even did my clue thing again from Knives Out, and it's just
the
random.
Thing that you forgot?
Yeah, because I Ooh. You know what, though? I'll tell you what. If I make it through this gauntlet, you owe me one of Brendan Gleeson's fingers.
We'll see if we can get a prop delivered with that. But let's just go ahead and just jump straight into this gauntlet thing. So Eric, is the Banshees of Inisherin a good or a bad movie?
Okay. Movies are made of, most of the time, pictures and sounds. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Many of the pictures and sounds included in this movie include green vistas, sunrises, sunsets,
mm-hmm.
and many of the sounds include Irish folk tunes. And a lot of the pictures and sounds included in this are of content typically described by other people as beautiful.
Yeah, I know. I get what you're saying. It's fine.
Sneaky.
Best scene.
I feel
What's
good.
The best scene in the movie.
The best scene in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Farrell drinks whiskey to the point that another character comments that it's too much. Dominic. And this is the first scene in the movie that he confronts Brendan Gleeson, with anger in his voice. Okay? In this scene, he starts a joke and doesn't finish it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The end of the movie, he says, I guess we're done. He goes, no, we're never going to be done. Okay? It's friend fighting with friend. It's humor of the movie, but then calling out someone for being a pedophile and child beater. I can't think of one aspect of the movie that isn't represented by the events of this scene. So if the movie is to be enjoyed, this scene features everything to be enjoyed.
Well, that's an opinion, though.
Is it? I might.
You're saying condition if condition A is true, then condition B is true. Someone could
as my guideline, if the content structure, like the images and sounds this movie is made up of, are considered good,
mm-hmm.
then the content of the scene is considered good, because this scene is made up of pictures and images that are of the movie.
That seems contradictory towards one of the later questions, but okay.
Let's get to the later question.
What should be cut from the movie?
Okay. Towards the end of the movie, there's a declaration made by Colin Farrell's Podrick that he is going to light a building on fire at 2 p.m., correct?
Correct.
So, when he is feeding his animals in sequence prior to 2 p.m., but after that day has started, and the coloration includes pinks and oranges as if it's evening, that would break my suspension of disbelief as to when it takes place. If you cut the colors from that scene, you would have a reduced chance of people seeing a error in chronology.
It's seeing an error. Okay. That's, you're not saying that it would. You're saying it would just reduce it. Not giving a guarantee. All right, fine.
You're gonna owe me Brendan Gleeson's finger.
Who's the best actor?
In the behind-the-scenes footage, Barry Keoghan points to Colin Farrell having to act different from his approach to other roles to characters with the way he carries himself and the way he does things. He has the most amount of screen time. And Martin McDonough spoke in the news about trying to remove the cool from his movies. So, Brendan Gleeson's character is playing a character that is dour and angry and somber, which he has done before. Other characters he has played have had those traits. Barry Keoghan's character is a character that says similar things and carries himself in a way that's similar to the young one from Six Shooter and Colin Farrell from In Bruges.
Right.
If you think of the lady from In Bruges who says, "You guys are crazy," the mother in that one, in relation to Carrie Condon's Siobhan, Colin Farrell's sister in this,
right,
there are similarities, and even in Seven Psychopaths, Martin McDonough spoke to his own struggles with writing for female characters.
Okay.
So I submit to you, and you can shut me down on this if you want, that Colin Farrell's performance is given the most originality and is even acknowledged by his co-stars as being the most challenging to pull off.
Challenging and most original does not equal best.
So, but he is praised by... He's praised by Barry Keoghan and his other co-stars in the special features.
All right, then, who is the worst actor?
As I said before, Barry Keoghan's character functions in a story way and is written similar to characters we've seen before. In terms of the main, I'm going to say 4 to 5 to 6. Barry Keoghan's dad and the old woman. Those main characters, Barry Keoghan is the one that is doing pretty much the same thing apart from one scene where he speaks to Colin Farrell's sister and asks genuinely, is there a chance for her to love him? So I would say that written into the movie is more versatility for every performance other than his.
But is his meant to have versatility, though?
That's not the question.
Well, if it's not meant to have versatility, then he's playing the character just fine. Therefore, he's doing a good job playing the character.
Okay. I'll take one more shot at this and buzz out if I can't do it.
Okay.
Okay. Barry Keoghan's character not being written to have as many, I'm just going to use a filler word, dimensions as other characters, keeps him from performing as rounded a character as other actors in the movie. The character is not as rounded as others. I would have to define what rounded means.
Right.
By listing facts. Okay, Brendan Gleeson serves as a friend and not a friend to Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell serves as a nice guy who has shades of being able to be aggressive and is in touch with his sister and, his sister is a defender of her brother and has a little bit of existential depression in her as evidenced by her leaving. Right. Full spoilers on this podcast, folks. So Barry Keoghan's character shares as much time on screen generally as the sister Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. So it seems as though his character is supposed to be familiar in the way those three are familiar.
You're right.
But we only know as much about him as we know about his father or the old woman.
I don't know. It seems like he's meant to just be like an irritant, like a guy that's meant to drive pressure into a scene.
But I can't say that yet.
I mean, I have other things to say about the guy, which I think gives him a little bit more importance. Like, I think he's a straight-up metaphor for the town of Inisherin itself.
So you're saying, I'm trying to say that his performance isn't something it should be, and you're trying to say that there are a lot of interpretations of what the purpose of his performance is.
Right.
Okay.
Well then.
So, yeah.
Let's just go into let's just start this off. What made you want to watch the Banshees of Inisherin?
All those movies.
Yeah, we're both fans of Martin McDonough.
In Bruges, Seven Psychopaths, 3 Billboards. He's familiar. He's an outstanding writer, and it was particularly in Bruges, the reunion. That I didn't hear about this until earlier this year. You'd think if they heard they were going to do that, I think maybe they knew that movie had grown a cult following, but they didn't understand how loud they could have been with it, I think.
Right.
Because 3 Billboards was such a hit that, like, people know what movie you're talking about in general.
Right.
So if you say it's the guy that made 3 Billboards with Colin Farrell and all that kind of stuff, it's so easy to spark someone's attention. So, yeah.
And, like, for me, it's kind of the same thing. Where, like, when I saw the trailer, and I saw the way that Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell were acting, like I said, it reminded me a lot of of the way they act in Bruges. And once you get into the meat of this movie, it's a very different kind of relationship. Like, it almost feels like those characters later in life in an earlier time.
See, I cut this out of my review. Okay. You're watching In Bruges. What are the last lines of that movie? Do you remember?
Oh, God, it's been a couple...
And I really hoped I wouldn't die. And then it fades to black. Kind of. And then if it turned white and faded in from white, that's the beginning of Banshees of Inisherin.
Okay.
In my review, I talked about a wild thing my brain went on because of the scene where the donkey died. I think this was going to be my what should be added to the movie. The sister should have left, in my opinion, when the donkey died, not the other way around.
Okay.
I mean, the whole thing is she's afraid of wasting her life till she dies, right?
Right.
At that moment, there would be no reason even for Colin Farrell to stay there. So there wouldn't be this weird sense. She could push him to leave with her.
Mm-hmm.
And what he reads in the letter, he could say to her.
Yeah.
And then she could write a letter back later saying, hope you'll come home, whatever. And the same thing. I just feel like it would have been more potent that way. Because what happens the other way is stuff is back to back to back. Cut the fingers. Okay. And misery. And now she's going to leave and misery. And then dead donkey. Right. Misery.
Right. No, this movie focuses on the dangers of stagnation and what it can bring, which is, which I said this in a tweet right after I saw the movie. The backdrop of the Civil War is a perfect metaphor for the relationship between Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell's character. Then like I said, Barry Keoghan's character is I think is a pretty good metaphor for the town of it for the island of Inisherin itself, where it's a guy refusing to change, and once he finds out that he has to change to actually do something, we don't know what happens. He just ends up in the river dead, which is what Inisherin is on the verge of becoming, an isolated town on the verge of death.
Just hand in hand, the island and death.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay, you will just be waiting to die. If you leave,
yes.
You have a chance at a life. But I disagree with you heavily that the movie is a warning against stagnation. I think if it was simple enough to say that one side of the coin was dangerous and should be avoided, mm-hmm. Death if you stagnate is a bad thing. Okay. I think it would be simpler and you wouldn't need this movie to explore that sort of thing. I think that this movie is about how I think it can be argued that Colin Farrell's character represents peace and appreciation for what you have.
Okay.
I think Colin Farrell is going to die on that island, and if his friend hadn't done what he did, he would have died happy. And that to me is the huge thing. Is I 100% agree with you when it comes to the Civil War being a good backdrop to this, because I think very early on Colin Farrell looks out and he says to anyone, good luck to you, whatever you're fighting for.
Right.
So he's speaking to both people. He just wants happiness for everyone. And he doesn't understand the idea that one's happiness is at odds with another person's. And the polar opposite, you have Brendan Gleeson, who is the opposite side of the coin, where it's ludicrous, the extreme that he's going to.
Right.
He could so easily tell Podrick, hey, I need to set aside a chunk of time for me. So how about I set work hours where I'm doing this and then we can hang out.
Right. So it's a balance between living in the moment and preparing for the future, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, none of them have kids, none of them have big jobs. They have work they have to do, but it seems fairly simple to tend to what they have.
Right.
And so if you have everything you need, and I think that's the whole reason they're bored. And I think that is the big commentary where the Civil War kind of comes in. Mm-hmm. You have people who can either accept what they have or want something they don't have. Mm-hmm. And the people who want something they don't have are going to disturb and unsettle the people who are happy with what they have. And eventually, they're either going to steamroll them and get what they want, or these people are going to stand up and fight back.
Yeah.
With one, you just have conquest. With the other, you have war.
Okay.
And that's how this ends. This opens with Colin Farrell not understanding even the idea of a civil war. And it ends with him essentially starting one.
But, but this movie is so downbeat and so, I want to say,
beautiful.
It's beautiful. Contemplative, I think, is the word that comes to my mind the most. It's full of lush green scenery. It's a very calm atmosphere. and amidst that calmness, you have this tension coming from one side, and them not adequately describing why that tension is there.
Like they lay this sort of narrative that he's been dealing with the despair,
Right.
and this led him to resent, I think, Colin Farrell for being so happy. It's like, I need to cut you out of my life in order to fully embrace and go where I need to go, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then throughout the movie, Brendan Gleeson is just constantly dragging him down to a point where at the end of the movie, he's just at Brendan Gleeson's level.
Yeah.
Which at times, like, there are moments in the film where you get glimpses of the old friendship. And those times add on more weight to those moments where it's just pulled away from you. And it makes it hurt all the more.
I think this movie, Kerry Condon, who I did not talk about in my first review, I'm going to review it a second time when it comes out. Gee, I wonder when it's going to come out on Blu-ray. St. Patrick's Day. Shaban twice has the exact same interaction, again with the sociopath, Colin, where she calls him out for what he's doing and how it's not okay, and he accepts, you're right, it's not okay, but don't you agree with me? And I think she best represents the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, if Barry Keoghan represents the island, she represents the rest of the world. Who is Barry Keoghan in love with who will never embrace him? Just that, I feel like people looking at Colin Farrell, it's like at Brendan Gleeson, there are so many people who are living their lives trying to do something meaningful. And then on the other side of it, it's like, really? Shouldn't people just be happy with what they have? But if you are, do things stagnate and gradually just die out, and then no one has anything? Like, it is so intentionally in limbo with these things by again putting things in high contrast.
The movie itself is in stagnation with its message.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, what's so effective about it is, and the idea that, like, I feel like this is the origin of Star Wars.
The evil empire,
right? But the evil empire is Colin Farrell,
right?
And this is the secret: is that Brendan Gleeson struck first. With art and creativity and imagination and all these things, like, they became the mystical forces. But
right. And there's a thing that like, through watching all four of his movies now, there's a certain sense of melancholy throughout all four of the films. Like, even with Seven Psychopaths, which is arguably the most upbeat and cheery and fun, is just about a bunch of people wallowing in despair. You have
I just got finished
writer
watching your film.
You have that.
I didn't see my number up there. And then, then when he says, "I'll come by Tuesday," he's like, "That's good. I'm not doing anything Tuesday." It's like, you sound like you've been through some stuff. I'll leave you alone now.
Right. But yeah, you have Colin Farrell, who's playing a screenwriter who's having writer's block. You have Christopher Walken. That's right.
Christoph Waltz and Christopher Walken as one person.
That would be awesome, actually. But Christopher Walken plays the Amish guy who just watched his wife die in bed. So he's at this point, like, his wife died in the hospital. So he's at this point in life where he just doesn't care anymore, and that's how he plays the character. It's fun and it's cheeky, but it's misery all throughout.
Mm-hmm. And in that one, Sam Rockwell plays the character that was played by Colin Farrell in Bruges, and the kid in Six Shooter, and Barry Keoghan in this, and
then of course, and then Three Billboards is nothing but straight up misery and depression and vengeance, which is great
to a point. which is just great. Which is it's nothing but misery, depression, and vengeance. It's great. Like, yeah, that's good. The reason Billboards, I love Three Billboards, is partially because of all of his movies. They feel like plays. I feel like you can tell, you can sort of see which sets would be fully built and moved around on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
And they flow like that. Like in this, you imagine a stage where stage left, which means to you in the audience is left, you have Brendan Gleeson's house. Okay?
Right.
And then a walkway up to an elevated bar. And then down to stage right, I guess I'm on camera. I should consider it. So stage left is Brendan Gleeson's house, a walkway into the bar. Stage right, you have Colin Farrell's farm. Mm-hmm. And then you would have a walkway down to a lakeside area, but then a bulk of it would be the shore.
Right.
And from above, it would look like a ring. So it'd be like the bar, the two houses, and the shore. And it would go from top to bottom like that. The whole movie takes place in just those locations.
Yes, it's very constrained.
And so you can kind of see how the whole thing would play out just on a stage. The same thing with Three Billboards, with the police station, a bar, her house, and the billboards. Mm-hmm. And there's a break in that movie, the investigation.
Right.
When Sam Rockwell's character shifts. And that's when it stops being all depressing and it turns to revenge. And that's great. Curtis. Mm-hmm. I love this movie. It's gorgeous.
It is.
You could watch it on mute and there'd be some shocking images, but it would be so pretty. Just to have background images on. I said this at the end of my thing, and what I meant to say instead of with all my heart was probably, unironically, I mean enjoy this movie. People, when you go see it, enjoy it. Because it's not often you get something that acknowledges that the world needs to shut the hell up once in a while. Mm-hmm. And this felt like that to me. And that is why I'm going to rewatch it time and again.
Like I like movies of all types, but for some reason, I don't know why, I like movies that focus on meditating on misery and loss and that kind of thing. Like one of my favorite movies from last year was Pig, starring Nicolas Cage, which if you've seen Mike and Jay talk about Pig, Jay describes it as a meditation on grieving and loss, which is, I think, a very accurate description of that film. And it's depressing to watch, but it's weird to say something that is depressing is entertaining, but it is. I throw like that in like that kind of thing into this, where I watch it for the meditation purpose, for the grieving, for like just a bunch of things, the visuals, the writing. There's a bunch of reasons why I would come back and watch this. Thank you for watching another episode of This Film Not Rated. Again, we are a branch of the Music City Drive-In Podcast Network. If you go to their website, you will find a bunch of other podcasts that have nothing to do with film. And you might be able to find something that's enjoyable about it.
There's a couple film podcasts.
There's a couple of them, but like the main ones that they're promoting are like the football podcast, and
the whole point is that the network is awesome, and you'll find something you'll enjoy.
We'll go.
And I'm Eric. And you can find me on Twitter at High Contrast FLM and on YouTube at High-Contrast. And
I'm Curtis. You can find me on Twitter at 90sgamer407 and on Twitch at 90sgamer407. And I'm starting to get that itch to start making anime videos again if I can find the time. There's one out there that I want to talk about that I won't get into here, but you can find me on YouTube with the handle at TalkAnimeGA.
Y'all have a wonderful night, and